Wasn't that a great presentation by Roberto and his students? And inspiring stories about what it's been like encountering APL as a young person. I don't expect you to believe this, but I was young once. And I don't remember my younger self very well, but he would have been not entirely surprised to find me in 2019 still being inspired and delighted by simple, elegant solutions to difficult problems. I do remember that he thought, after discovering APL, that all programming was going to be done in APL in the future. So he would have been surprised in 2019 to find so many more programming languages than there were back then, though a little consoled to find that one of them is named after Monty Python's Flying Circus. I was always very fond of that. So this session is an inquiry into what discovering APL is like in the 21st century. And to find out a little bit about what it's like to be young again for many of us. I've got 4 guests to help me with this. Would you please welcome my first guest today, Josh David. Josh, your hometown is Scranton in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's right.
That's for those of us who don't know Scranton, it's a town which flourished, I guess it had its high point about 100 years ago as a steel refining town. So the center of the town, you can see the remnants of great steelworks and the industry that was. But where you live in Scranton, grew up, is not like that. I remember shade trees, and could you describe it for us? What's it like growing up in Scranton?
Yeah, so there's lots of hills where we were, and I guess there's a kind of porch life over there in Scranton. So people sit outside, and you go for a walk, and you run and talk to neighbors, and it's sort of social. There's not much to do there now that it was big in the steel industry, the coal industry, and kind of started dying down after a while. But yeah, it's a small town, but it's very easy to interact with neighbors and find out what other people are doing because there's not much to do in Scranton.
And I believe that I knew one of your neighbors.
Yeah. So one of my neighbors was Paul Mansour, and I got to know him growing up. He was a good family friend, and there was lots of interactions with him. So that's really how I got started with APL, because we would have a lot of interactions and do some small, math equations together, and then eventually, one summer, he offered me an internship to work at the Carlyle Group, his company. And that's really where I got my first experience with programming. I had no idea what it was, and I got to be exposed to the world of APL.
And that was your first programming language?
I would say, yeah, the first programming language where I did real work.
So Paul got to you young.
Yeah.
How old was that when you started working with Paul?
I must have been around 15 or so.
Is that even legal?
No. Yeah. What's that? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, some of it was educational, I would go and I got to look into some of the books in APL, Mastering Dyalog' APL and APL2 at a glance. So, a lot of it was educational in the beginning.
What were you thinking at the time? Is this like, hey, I've got myself an entire career, this is me set for the rest of my life, or was this will keep me off the streets until I finish school?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of intimidating when you start, and you're looking around at functions and you see a function made by Phil Last when you just start APL, and that was kind of intimidating. But at the other hand, it was very intriguing. What's going on here? How is this little small function? How are systems built on this? And I always knew I wanted to go into computing, and this was a very interesting way for me to start and get into learning how to do computer science, and more importantly, how to approach problems and think of them in a different way than other languages would have you process them.
So from interning with Paul's company at 15, did you then go on to formal studies in computer science?
Yeah, so then I went to the university and pursued a degree in computer science. And some summers I would do some internships with him again. And I've done an internship with a company that was not APL, another computer science company. So it was on and off from there. And some summers I would work there. But yeah, I would kind of continue working with APL throughout my college career, but there was lots of other projects I did that were not in APL. So I had kind of two worlds of programming.
Did you tell anybody about APL?
Yeah. I'd always.
What were those conversations like?
They were, naturally, if you're sitting in the library or whatever with a black screen and APL symbols, people walk by and obviously want to know what's going on here. So it was easy to have icebreakers into, oh, what is that? What are those characters doing? And so people are always interested in seeing something different, which is another interesting thing now. 50 years into APL, it's kind of becoming new again, because a lot of the new people coming up have no idea what it is, and it's different from what they've seen, so that makes it quite attractive to some people, and it gives you a platform to speak about it.
So besides people coming up to you and saying, what is that you're doing? Did the conversations go beyond that? Did anyone else follow you into it?
I don't think anyone has followed me into it, but that could be because of it wasn't as easy to acquire before. So now I'm very happy that young people are going to be able to download APL without any license binding or anything. They could just download it and start playing with it. And we have things like Try APL now, which is nice, but people want to have the full session to go off and explore with. And so I think it'll become even easier now to have young people exploring APL and getting their fingers wet with it. And yeah.
So it's become much easier to share now, hasn't it?
Yes, I think so.
When you'd finished your formal studies, you went back to work with Paul?
No, I just graduated this year earlier in June, and I had the choice to either go off and work with another company in a Java-like language, or I've heard that Morton was planning on creating a North American consulting team for APL, so I had to make the decision, and here I am.
It's great to have you with us. Well, you had a very different experience from my next guest. James, would you please come up and join us here? Yeah, you have to come faster because the applause should last all the way to the chair. You guys have to do better. James, your hometown is Crawley.
Yep, that's correct.
Everybody here knows Crawley. It's famous as the place where The Cure started.
The Cure?
Yeah, 80s band, before your time. We have Robert Smith fans out here? A few. Okay.
Well, that's news to me anyway.
Crawley is of course, just south of Gatwick Airport, so many of us who've never heard of the place have actually been quite close to it.
Yeah, it's easier to describe it as, it's near London, it's near Gatwick. So when I'm abroad or something, it's near London. That's pretty close.
So you raised in Crawley, your schooling was there, and you...
Yeah, born in Crawley, I'll probably die in Crawley. That's, or at least in England, I think.
And you'd already in school identified a love of mathematics and computer science. You could see yourself heading that way.
Yeah, I thought initially maybe a finance career. I noticed maths was something that came quite easily to me. But computing as in programming, I didn't actually pick up until I was about sort of GCSE level. I think 15, I was the first time I actually tried programming anything. And this was Visual Basic, so quite different to APL. But it's very different, like I say. When I got to the choice of my GCSEs, they said, you can do IT, or for the first time we're running computing GCSE. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. It can't be too bad. If it's dreadful, I'll change. I thought, why not? And I kind of just fell in love with it. The homework tasks, I'd continue going. I'd go a bit further with everything that they set, and keep picking up from there.
So there you were, heading towards university, and you'd already kind of locked into a groove of computing science as the way to go.
Yeah, I was going to do some sort of computing with maths. I still wanted that maths aspect in my life, but computing was definitely going to be something I did. I like programming, but I'd still never heard of APL until I actually met Paul Grosner. I was, again, 15. I needed to do some work experience as some sort of mandatory requirement at school. And I found, I think it was my dad actually called. Yeah, he's nodding. He called up and said, can I come work there for a couple of days? I need some sort of programming experience, that sort of stuff. And Paul said, yeah, I'd come along. I think I had an interview. And I ended up working there for 5 days. And this language, this APL language, it's obviously very different to Visual Basic, but it's very close to maths, and I like maths. So it grew on me. And there was subtle differences between maths, obviously. I'd never seen matrices before, but I got there, I think. There was things like scalars and one-element vectors that that stuff was lost on me as a kid. I mean, I still consider myself a kid. But at 15, I don't think I was smart enough to understand that stuff. And even nowadays, describing that to a non-APLer, I find quite difficult.
So like Josh, you'd had an early taste of the language and rather liked it.
I did, yeah. Like you say, I was going to go to university. I didn't go to university, but I was accepted to university. Essentially, I decided not to go. And I hit up Optima Systems, said, do you have any places? Do you have any apprenticeships going? Because they had apprentices at the time. When I was doing work experience there, and I said, would you take an apprentice? And I think eventually they said yes. There was a time period, maybe over a month or so, but I kept asking, how's it going? Every week or so, and eventually they said yes. But yeah, I don't think they regret it. Do you, Paul?
So you've been at Optima now?
It depends. 3.5 years officially. But from the work experience, I was doing that since 15, and I'm 22 now.
And becomes something of an industrial programmer. Yeah, okay. Well, once again, we have a very different route from that of my next guest. Julia, would you please join us up here? Nicely done. Yulia, hi. Your hometown is Kiev in the western Ukraine. Yeah?
Hello everyone. I am happy to hear among young people. Yeah, thank you for giving me that opportunity. Yes, I am living in Kiev. I think it's not west. Okay, it's western. Maybe it's center. It's more center.
Tell us a bit about growing up in Kiev and where you went to school.
Actually, I am not from Kiev. I am from small city, but I went to university and finished it in Kiev. But I am from small city in Ukraine. Even I don't think someone knows about that one.
And you like to do mathematics in school?
Yes, I loved mathematics in school, and I even didn't imagine that I will be a programmer.
No, you picked a different career, didn't you?
Yes, previously I was an actuary, but I decided to find a new job and applied for a SimCorp.
Oh, in Britain, I think it's true, in much of Western Europe, actuaries a very difficult mathematical job to qualify for, are very well paid and have good working conditions, at least the ones I know. And I've met a few. It's been said many times, APL secretly stands for Actuarial Programming Language. But I gather that your experience in Ukraine was not quite like that.
Yes. I can admit that, unfortunately, in Ukraine, actuaries are not well paid, at least on the beginning, and there are a lot of my friends which switched from actuary to programmer, and it's how it works.
So you were looking for a better way to earn a living.
Yes.
And you'd got colleagues and friends who'd already, before you, moved towards programming?
Yes, a lot of my friends from university became programmers. Even we learned mathematics, but they became programmers. And also, I wanted also to try. And I wanted to be, when I applied for a position in SimCorp, I wanted to be a tester. But they said that they offered me but position of developer. They asked me, do you want to be a developer? I think, I'm not sure, let I try. And I am very happy, I didn't regret. I am very happy that I became a software developer and not a tester. It's really a good luck, and I obtained a good chance. And I am really thanks SimCorp to that opportunity.
So how did that work for you? Coming from a background of mathematics, now you're a developer. What did you do? What was your first day at work like?
Now I am programming in APL. I was taught by author of Master in Dialogue, Bernard Legrand, and it was really nice when I discovered APL, and really I love it. And from the first time by today, but nowadays, I don't know how to explain, but yes, I'm coding in APL using the requirements of company.
Previously, I believe you've been working on Excel macros in VBA.
Yes, previously I wrote macros to automate job in Excel, and I didn't have enough experience with programming before joining SimCorp. It's just I wrote macroses. Do you know how to write macroses in Excel? It's like when you want to automate things, not just formulas, you write macroses. But I know that there are a lot of people who hate that style, and I don't promote it.
All right. Well, we have another very different story again from my fourth guest. Alva, would you come up and join me here? Alva, you're of course our programming competition winner. Congratulations on winning that.
Thank you.
You started in Uppsala, I believe, is your hometown.
I'm from Stockholm, but I have been living in Uppsala for 10 years now, I think, almost.
And you have had a long interest in computer science and in programming languages, I think.
That is true. And I read a lot about this stuff. I still spend a lot more time reading about programming than actual programming. And that's how I came across APL. I think my first exposure to it, I don't quite remember, but I think it was Iverson's Turingwood paper, where he talks about APL as a mathematical notation.
So you're studying at Uppsala?
Yes.
Yes. In computer science?
I think I was doing only math at the time, but I'm doing both.
So unlike our colleagues here, you had seen a lot of different programming languages before you came across APL. You read Iverson's Turing Award paper, the notation as a tool of thought. But that was, I think, some time before you came across the programming competition.
Yeah, definitely. So I read the paper and I've read a few more things since, but I didn't try it out. I didn't write any programs in APL. I was intrigued by the paper, but I was also interested in a lot of different things, so I moved on. And then last year I kind of rediscovered the competition and I figured that this is a good opportunity to actually try it out.
How did you discover the competition?
I don't remember.
Okay.
What?
You read a lot of stuff, who knows?
Yeah. But a funny story is that I said last year in my presentation that this was the first time I actually wrote some APL, and that turned out to be a lie. Because when I looked through my inbox some time or another, I searched for Dyalog', and then I found some really old emails from 2014. And I remembered that I signed up for the competition that year as well, actually. I solved, I think, 3 problems in Try APL, and then gave up and forgot all about it.
So these guys were all guided to APL by people they knew or by your employers, but you found your own way to it. Tell us a bit more about, so you don't remember how you found your way back to APL, but once you decided to participate in the programming competition, what were your next steps? Did you go to Try APL? Did you download?
I decided that this time I would not do Try APL, and so I applied for a license, which I got, and then I started APL, and then I couldn't quit it. So it took half a year before I discovered how you do parent off, and that was because I overlooked Morten doing it.
This is like that old joke about I've been using Vim as my text editor
for the last 2 years now because I haven't figured out how to exit the program.
And it makes it even more fun that I am using Vim as my text editor.
Okay, so there you are. You've got APL running on your machine. You can't turn it off. And you've worked on the programs, and the rest is history. What do you think, given your exposure to so many other programming languages, what were your impressions of it as a language now that you've solved problems in it? I mean, it's not industrial programming, but you've written some non-trivial programs in it.
I think it's really fun compared to other languages. And one thing that makes me write APL is its tierceness. Because I think of a program and then most times I never write it. But in APL, since it's only a line or so, I might actually try it out.
What if you didn't have APL in your life? What other languages would you think, well, this would be interesting to work in?
I do like functional programming, so I think I would be writing more Haskell and maybe Lisp. I'm not totally sure.
Lisp?
Yes. Lisp is one of those languages which I love, but I don't use. I've read, I think, maybe 5 books on Lisp. I haven't really written anything substantial in Lisp.
Are there any programming languages you use?
I have been working with Python as a software developer for 1.5 years, so I've used that a lot.
As a software developer?
Yes.
And what kind of programs are you developing?
Then I was developing the backend for a mobile phone app for doing. We had statistics and match information and news and stuff about esports. So for people who were interested, they would have the app, and we would have a database. We feed in stuff and get it out. And I was doing the backend programming for that. It's called Strafe, if anyone is interested.
This is really a question for all of you. What do you see as needed in the language that would help you in your work?
I think a formal training course is essential. Something similar to what Bernard Legrand offered previously at Dialog House. I know there's a lot of movement to online stuff, webinars, and I think Richard Park is doing Jupyter notebooks, things like that, which he'll demonstrate later in the conference, I think. It's, I think, vital to have a teacher, someone physical that can answer questions that something like a Jupyter notebook can't. I benefit from having a teacher, someone in my office that I can ask questions to, but I know that's not necessarily true of every newcomer to the language. Do you want to comment on it?
Yes, I completely agree with James, and thank you for that good idea. It's really very nice to have formal trainings for beginners, for intermediate, for advanced. It's like structured trainings, and but I know we have video streams now, but still it would be nice to have webinars or more of our structured trains. And especially what I miss, it may be some hints for developers. I don't know if it's possible to implement, but for example, when I write function and inside my function I call other function, and this other function has a right and left argument, but I call this other function only with right argument. I miss left argument, and I obtain syntax error only on runtime, and not like what I am aiming, it's like a simplest example. I want to have some ticks and some hints for developers, like even for simplest syntax error or what is possible to implement. And other stuff which might be useful, it was George. I was inspired by George's presentation about forms. It's really makes developers life easier, not to start from HTML render from the beginning. You can just run one function, and there is a template. You can edit settings. It is easy. Then start doing that from the scratch. And it's really nice to have some frameworks and libraries to do stuff. For example, with HTML render or with other things which are not simple to go from the scratch.
Thanks, I'll give you the check later. Yeah, I think that's one thing that that's been lacking in Dyalog', and it's always been a main criticism, is the libraries and interfaces, and I hope that's one thing that we can accomplish in the next few years, especially with everyone moving towards Git, and people are not just Dyalog', but other companies contributing and to these open source projects, and having other interfaces to keep up with modern technology. Like, I'm hoping for some interfaces into machine learning in APL. Like, there's libraries that many other languages have interfaces to, such as TensorFlow, and it would be nice to have an APL natural interface to that. So things like that, I think, should be developed in APL, and I think that would be very useful.
However, with your experience, or wide experience of other languages, if you imagined yourself doing development in APL, can you imagine what you most be missing?
This is a hard one.
We know you're up to it.
Static typing, yeah, that would be cool to have. I think, I don't know, but I'm gonna respond a little bit to what you said. Libraries are super useful, but I am fascinated that APL has sort of come this far without having a huge package repository, which everyone uses. I think it's really interesting that when solving something in APL, the first thing you do is not go search on the internet for some ready-made solution, but actually looking at the problem and saying, can I do this myself? And usually you can.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's a reputation which we've had for decades now, as APLers always want to do it ourselves. When I was a young man, we looked forward to careers in computing. IBM was hiring people who expected to work as programmers, possibly at the same company for pretty much all their working lives. And we understand the world that you've been born into is works very differently from that. But by way of wrapping up, could you each say something about how you see APL in your own future?
For me, my own future is very unclear to me at this point, because I'm just finishing university and will look for a job or maybe a PhD position later on, and I don't know if I will do APL or not. And if I don't know how I will keep in touch with this community, because I like it. Oh, one more thing. Can I say something for the language as a whole? I think I really do hope that APL survives the future, but I also hope that the community stays small and niche.
Niche is nice.
In my own, I just want to admit that I completely agree with all that community is small, and it's really nice that we can directly touch and speak with you guys. If you are developers of Dyalog', it's very nice that we can speak directly with you and meet. But how about my APL future? It's really hard to say, but I think I will program on APL and in the nearest future, and hope APL will be spread it out all over the world.
Thank you. My APL future. That's tough to talk about, considering my boss is in the audience. So I have to be a little careful what I say. But I would like to continue using APL. But again, this is no offense to Paul. I have to consider that should the company not cease to exist or something like that, it might be difficult to find a job in APL in comparison to something like, I don't know, Python or C or something like that. So learning those technologies or learning another language, investing time into another language would be beneficial. But yes, I would like to continue, given the opportunity to work in APL. I think that's...
Don't worry about your company. If you can always join SimCorp.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is investing time in APL, it does have its reward. I think there's always opportunity, especially in our day and age in the technical sector. And investing time in APL is helpful because it gives you a different approach to looking at problems and seeing things in a different way that I think is useful throughout the whole computer science industry and many other industries for that case. So I'm not very worried about the future for APL, and there's lots of systems written in APL that need to be maintained in the future. So I think there's lots of opportunities.
A happy note to end on. Thank you. Would you please thank my guests for their generosity in coming up and sharing their lives with us? We hadn't planned to do this, but we started early, so there's time, I think, for some questions if anybody has any.
Thank you all for sharing your stories. One of the themes that I heard from some of you was that a mentor was very important in your discovery and growth in APL. So I have a question for the APL community and for Dyalog'. Would it be worthwhile for us to maintain a mentor, available mentor list? So for myself, I live in New Jersey, and if someone in my community discovered APL, but I didn't know that they were interested in APL, I certainly would volunteer to be a mentor to someone that had just discovered it and wanted to, some additional help. So would people be willing to do that if Dyalog' would be willing to maintain that list? Because I myself would volunteer as a possibility. So that's just a thought. Because I sense that even so. That's my comment. Again, thank you for your stories.
So I have two questions. One is you guys are the success story, basically, of being able to find APL and work with it effectively, find employment, or at least interest at a hobby level. So do you have any thoughts on maybe your experiences with seeing other people try and fail to understand APL or embrace it, or maybe thoughts on your roles as younger ambassadors present, sort of maybe share the passion a little bit or share the interest. And then secondly, there's a very big sense in which the APL community sort of exists separate from the computer science community at large, and especially going through training at university for mathematics, which I think is a lot of what you guys did, instead of a formal computer science program. Do you see a way to bridge the gap back, and maybe where would you see APL's place in a more traditional computing path?
I can answer on first your question about failing IPL. About failing, I can say that a lot of newcomers which join the company, it's not easy from the beginning to start IPL. As they start, they read code like .NET-ish with loops, with while, for, and it needs to develop habit to think IPL-ish, and it's needs even 1 or 2 years needs to be used to develop in that style, and that is. I can't say, I don't know, it's a failure, but it's not like, as you maybe all think, it's like easy. When developers switch from .NET or from other language, they want to they think a bit another way. And recently, newcomer we joined to our company said, "Oh, in IPL I should think."
So I tried to get as many people as I could to participate in this year's competition, and in the end I think I only managed to get one guy to submit a solution, but he came second, so that was good. Rasmus present. Oh really? That many? They didn't tell me that they submitted solutions, but hey, I couldn't force them to do that. But anyways, then I heard from some other people who got my email, and they were intrigued, and they maybe tried out a few of the problems, but then dropped it exactly as I did the first time. So I think the learning curve has a big step in the beginning, which is hard to get over. I don't really know what to do about it, though.
Hello. Just quickly, and there's no worry, I'm not going to ask you a question. This is more of a statement. But I was just trying to work out the timings and things in our company. I think, James, you're number 7 of our apprentices. Sam up there is number 8, our most recent apprentice. And all I really want to say is it's impressive to me how able the youngsters are today to absorb this stuff. Doesn't matter whether it's APL or something else, but they absorb it so readily. And how much they can give back to us. Show us new ways of thinking, new ideas, new strange languages which somehow we can encompass within our APL programs. And they do a very good job. And James is doing a very good job. Sam, 5 months now, he's doing some good stuff with APL already. And I'm very impressed. So I'd just like to thank these 4, those 3, and all the rest of the youngsters here, because you really are doing a great job. Thank you.